And the question of whether women belong in combat or in the military at all. U.S. law forbids the use of women in combat roles, but the reality of modern warfare makes the distinction between combat and non-combat roles hard to maintain. Is fighting for their country just one more step in women's long march toward equality, or is the battlefield one place where women just don't belong? Bob?
General Vaught, can we now, as a result of what happened in Panama, expect to find 20-year-old, 5'1", 100-pound women storming the beaches, going into hand-to-hand combat, leading Marines into battle? Is it a new era?
No, I don't think it's a new era. I think it's a continuation of where we've been to a considerable degree.
Answer the question. Can we expect women to really be doing that, fighting and leading platoons into combat, real infantry, Marine, and Army platoons?
No, because as a result of the combat exclusion laws that the Congress passed some years ago, and as the way the Defense Department has carried out the policy on that, we will not see women in the infantry, artillery, or armor.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because isn't it a fact that they never intended this woman to be leading a combat attack upon the Panamanian Defense Force? This was a mistake?
Oh, I wouldn't say this was a mistake. Is it a question that they did not intend that when the law was passed in 1948? Absolutely. It was not intended at that time. But I think we have come a long way from that. I mean, that's 40-some years, 50 years ago.
Where do you draw the line between assailing a Panamanian Defense Force where people are getting killed and excluded activities such as leading an infantry charge? Where's the line?
Well, I don't think there is much of a line anymore, and that's a part of our problem is how we define combat.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell, whether it was a mistake or not, this unexpected experiment in Panama seems to have turned out pretty well. Captain Bray did very well. 3 other enlisted women were part of the storming of Noriega's headquarters. All the men involved with them, serving under her, working with them, seemed perfectly contented with it, not dissatisfied at all. What's your problem?
Well, I don't have a problem. The military has a problem with women in it. Even though what we know from what happened down there was that they accomplished their mission, we don't know how well they did it. We do know that women do not have the physical strength to do a lot of the jobs they would be required to do in combat, that they present a lot of problems for the military could otherwise do without. We know, in fact, that using women in the military means we pay more for women, we pay more for the military, and we put up with a less capable force.
How do we pay more when we're simply extending the opportunity to serve their country to half the population?
The problem is that women require 2 to 3 times as much medical attention as men do. They're single parenthood's many times more likely. It's done on the DoD study.
Well, wait.
It's all done in the DoD studies.
To be scientific here for a minute, the chance of single parenthood is exactly equal between men and women because it does take one of each. At least that's my understanding.
Who ends up with a little child, and who is then not able to deploy to Panama because they have a little child at home?
Whose fault is that?
The woman ends up with that.
Whose
if she's
fault
pregnant,
is that?
she can't deploy. That's what happens, and that's what the military has to deal with. Women are 8 times as likely to be single parents. Women require more medical attention. They have higher attrition rates. They cause problems with fraternization and dual service.
I find it kind of interesting. I think women are 100% more likely to become pregnant than men.
I didn't say that.
Well, I know you didn't,
General
but
Vaught, you may
have
confused the listeners as much as you confused me on your opening answer. So I'm going to ask you again, yes or no, do you think women should be in combat and leading combat teams?
That's a different question, I believe, than what you asked the first time.
What's the answer?
The answer to that is that I think that we should be looking for people to lead combat teams who are well-trained, have the ability, and the physical strength to do that.
And one way to do that is to identify them as male, and then you know that they're going to have 30% more strength than the female.
Listen, there's a lot of women who have 30% more strength than me or Bob. Why can't you judge their strength?
Mike, speak for yourself.
There's plenty of women, even in our prime, which for both of us is long past, some of us further past than others, there were plenty of women who could have taken us. Why can't you have objective tests? Why do you need to draw the line in terms of sex?
When the services have tried to do that, those efforts have been shot down because they will inevitably exclude a lot of women from a lot of jobs. And that's not what the proponents of women in the military
No, I think what we have to do is look at the jobs and develop a criteria for each job of what it takes, and we have never done that.
The Army did it in 1982, and they found that it
was
so politically
ineffectively.
sensitive. It was a good study. General Scheinmeyer, the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time, approved that it was ordered to be implemented, and yet when he retired, they just threw the whole thing.
General Vaught, are you saying then that you would take these women, and somebody like Captain Bray, who led this assault on the Panamanian Canine Corps, because she's 5'1" or 5 foot even, 100 pounds, that she would be excluded from leading a combat unit because she's just a little kid? Is that what you're saying?
I think that we need to objectively look at what's really required. She did very well, and she obviously demonstrated that she was a leader, and that's what you want. We had men who were 5'1",
even then, the
through
issue is
history,
not
who
just the
were
ability to
leaders.
do the job, because you still have the problem of the greater need for medical attention, the greater likelihood of being single parent, the problems with predeployment.
I think you.
All
I
of
don't
that
think it
factors
makes,
into the ability
wait a
of
minute,
the
I don't think it makes
services
any
to do their
difference.
job.
I don't think we
Well, it does
just look
indeed.
at
It means
the
money,
number.
It means time. It means what
Oh.
it takes for the military to do its job.
But Brian,
they are combat organizations.
Brian, it's
Excuse me, let
something
the
more.
general.
It's something more than just that requires more medical attention. I think we need to look at lost time, and every study that I have ever been aware of indicates that men have higher lost time than women.
No, the only lost time study is done lately was 10 years ago, and that's when drug abuse was very high, indiscipline was very high. All of that has fallen. Pregnancy rates have not fallen at all.
Oh, that was.
Look, surely I think we could concede, even the general will concede, that women are different from men. They're going to, changing social roles, bringing women into the Army is going to require changing circumstances. Now, I was not in the Army myself, but I've been in other institutions when they went co-ed, when women came in, and there were always people who saying, oh my gosh, this is going to involve impossible changes, will be changed beyond recognition, our function will disappear. And in every case, the changes required turned out to be a lot less than they seemed at first to the stick in the muds. And in fact, after the change occurred, it very quickly became impossible to remember it was ever the other
The
way.
And it was
military
better.
is different. The military is different. And the cost is not only in dollars, but also in lives. And what we're doing is we're putting a lot of not as effective people into the military who can cost American
Are you
lives.
calling
in this
Mrs. Bray, Miss Bray, I don't know if she's married or
Captain
not.
Bray.
Captain
Let's call her
Bray.
Captain
No, I'm
Bray.
saying she is a detriment to our military because she is not as able to perform as well as the men she's
How can you say that when she has just been tested and has come through with flying colors?
This
How
test
can you
has
say
proved nothing. This is absurd to suggest that this one little incident here, this one little gunfight, then proves that she's
General
a good
Vaughn.
I
combat
don't think
soldier.
it is
That's
one.
absurd.
Well,
I don't think it is just one incident. I think you have to go back to the history of what women have done in the military war since the Revolutionary War.
General
World
Vaughn,
War I,
didn't-
World War II.
Didn't Mike really put his finger on it when he said that he didn't know about the Army? Isn't the Army really different than any other thing than Harvard University or the New Republic? Isn't it a different kind of an organization? How can you take male bonding out of the military and expect it to be the military?
Well, I think the important thing is that you bond. And I think that men and women can bond together in an effective,
Unfortunately,
cohesive.
been
it
bonding
results
for a
in single
long time.
parents and little children, and that's what
I
happens.
don't think we're out
with
trying to-
female
You seem
bond.
to be obsessed
That's what
with the
happens.
idea of single parents.
It is a
if
big
women,
problem for
if
the
women in the
military.
military,
It is a big
what could
problem
be
for the military.
easier than setting up an institution so that if we're going to go off to Panama in the middle of the night, we have ways to deliver kids to an institution that could take care of them. Presumably, it's not going to happen that
If the
often.
American people
How
want
is that
to-
a major
if
problem?
The American people
Seems to be a very
want-
minor problem.
If the American people want to do that, they're willing to, they can do that. But they will end up paying more for their military defense and putting up with a less effective force. Now, what they've done
Why is it
instead
less effective?
is
That's what
the
you
only
don't
reason
say.
they've tolerated putting women in the military is because they've been fed this line that it doesn't cause problems, that it doesn't create a greater cost, that it doesn't create inefficiency.
Okay, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to broaden the question and ask, as Mr. Mitchell would like to ask, whether women should be in the military at all.
The greatest homes in America are decorated by the company store. Now you can shop from the comfort of your home with our free catalog. We manufacture our down comforters in our factory in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Our down comforters are hand-guided and hand-sewn, a dedication practiced by our skilled seamstresses since 1911. We offer the world's finest down products direct from the manufacturer to you in our free catalog. Our down comforters are made with soft 100% cambric cotton, filled with fine white European down, and backed by the best guarantee we know of. If you're not satisfied for any reason, we'll send a UPS truck to your home at our expense and send an immediate refund. The company store makes it easy to decorate great American homes like yours.
Call now for your free catalog, 1-800-257-1257. 1-800-257-1257.
If you like sports, you can win $100 right now in your home. Just go to the phone and dial this number, Kelly's Phone Quiz. Use your push buttons to answer 9 sports trivia questions, and we'll pay you $100. Simple to do and a lot of fun. You can even select your favorite sports category.
Call now. Answer 9 questions correctly with your push-button phone and win $100. 1-900-246-KELLY. $1.50 first minute, 75 cents additional minute.
Call now and let your fingers win you $100.
AIDS has found a new target. Teenage boys and girls. Meet a young victim who thinks she got AIDS from her first and only boyfriend. Tonight on Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. We're talking about women in the military. Why? Because it turns out for the first time ever, American women soldiers were actually involved in fighting during the invasion of Panama. Our guests are Brigadier General Wilma Vaught, who is retired from the United States Air Force. General Vaught is president of the foundation that is raising money for a memorial in honor of America's military women. And Brian Mitchell, a former Army captain and author of a book entitled Weak Link, The Feminization of the American Military. So you can guess where Mr. Mitchell stands. Let me ask something to both of you, because this is something you might agree about. The current law says women can serve in the military but cannot serve in combat. And people on both sides of it...
That's not quite what the law says. The law says that women cannot be assigned to ships engaged in combat or to aircraft engaged in combat. That's all the law says.
Well, then the military policy has gone beyond
right.
that and says they can't serve in any combat situation.
That's right.
Now, people are saying today that's really an impossible distinction. Either you got to let them fight in every join in every situation, or you've got to say they've got to stay out of the military. Now, maybe that's something you can both agree on. Is it an impossible distinction between combat roles and non-combat roles?
It is strictly arbitrary, and it does lead to problems that we don't need to deal with. They are combat organizations. Having women in support branches and in support roles puts them in places where they don't have the strength to do a lot of the jobs they're assigned.
I would disagree with that.
They still cause the problems, so it doesn't make any more sense to put them only in support jobs.
Is this a tenable distinction?
What do you
Is this a
disagree
tenable
with?
distinction?
I don't
between-
think it's a tenable distinction anymore. I think we have to look at the changes in weaponry since that law was passed, and we have to look at what's happening demographically with the declining male population.
Well,
General Vaught, I'm having a little trouble understanding where you stand, and I'll tell you, usually when people don't really want to reveal where they stand, they tend to throw a little fog.
Listen, I don't want there to be any question about where I stand.
Let me just ask you a question. Do you favor women, if they are physically fit, I don't mean 6 foot,
And
6'5" and 225 pounds, but normal, physically healthy women, do you favor them leading Marine and Army infantry platoons into combat?
I have no trouble with women doing that if they are physically able to do it and they are trained to do it.
But that's a hooker, General, because...
We shouldn't have anybody out
because
doing it if they are not trained.
Mr. Mitchell says no women are physically able to do it.
Well, I think
What is your
Mr.
measurement of that?
Mitchell is wrong.
I wouldn't quite say
Very
that.
few.
Some of them are able to do those jobs, but even
Many
the ones
are
who
able to do their jobs.
even though, well, the Army estimates that 75% of the jobs in the Army require more strength than 89% of the women in
But
the
I would
Army.
contend that we need to look at the total force. We have
Even-
over 2 million people in uniform today. Now, when we go back to World War II, only 1 out of every 10 people that were in the
So what?
military actually served in combat. In Vietnam, that was 1 out of 14.
But we said you
that
can't
means
make the distinction, so that's an
90%
irrelevancy.
of the jobs can be
We
filled by
said-
women.
We
But
said
do
you
you
can't make that
want
distinction.
the women to fill the grunts jobs in Vietnam? And I can't quite get a. You say you have no trouble with it. Yes or no? Do you want them to fill those jobs?
I feel that women should have the opportunity to be full-fledged citizens. Do I think that every person out there should be a woman? No.
I didn't say that, but anyway,
Seems to me the answer is yes.
I think she's saying yes, but she won't say yes. But let me ask you this. You know, in all of the world, the only armies that have women in combat roles are armies that pretty well you can be assured are never go into combat. The Soviet Army doesn't have women. The Chinese
The
Army
Soviet
doesn't.
Army has women.
Not in combat roles.
Not in combat.
One out of
All right.
400.
The Chinese Army doesn't. The Israeli Army tried it, and
No,
they're
they
not in
didn't.
combat now.
They tried women in combat.
And they were
found
no
that
good.
It didn't work.
The Norwegians
Norwegians.
and the Norwegians
So we should
were
be
in
following the
combat in World War
Norwegians, and we
II.
should be
Not with
following the
women.
Danes.
Not with
Well, I
women.
would have
The
thought,
Canadians.
Mr. Mitchell, that the United States of America shouldn't be following anybody. Why can't we be the first in equality and justice in this world?
Actually, we did sort of lead the way in this in the early 70s, and the others have really just surpassed us in the last few
We
years.
didn't lead the way in the early 70s. We led the way in World War I. We led the way in the Spanish-American War. We led the way in World War II.
No, we didn't.
General,
I
Yes, we
to.
did on employment of women.
General, I don't want you to obfuscate on this, because you know that there's never been an army in the history of the world that had women as combat soldiers. The Norwegian army in World War II had no women in it. You know that.
There have been the women in Ethiopia. There are women in Ethiopia filling a combat role today.
All right.
Brutalizing. Are they brutalizing the people along with the rest of that dastardly
I don't know
group?
whether they're brutalizing them or not,
Well, I
but
hope
it's
not.
it's
I
rather
think more
interesting
women
as they
than
go
that.
home. They want to play a leadership role as they get back to their communities.
Mr. Mitchell, I think you're being a little coy too, just as Bob was accusing the general. I can't really believe that you have dedicated a large part of your life to this campaign to keep women out of the military and certainly keep them out of combat because you're concerned about somewhat increased costs from health care.
I'll tell you why I wrote this
That can't really be the reason.
I wrote this book because I didn't like, as an Army officer, being lied to. I didn't like being fed a line that women are doing fine in the military and that there aren't any military reasons why not to use them in combat, why not to draft them. That's our position today, and that is not backed up by the evidence. They lied to me. They told me that single parenthood wasn't a female problem because most of the single parents were men.
And
well,
that's
I
true.
found out in the research of my book that's not true at all. What they
3
did,
times
they
as many of
included-
the people
Well,
who are
no.
single-member
If
parents
They-
are
you're,
men.
Not at all.
want
That's
to
a
make the
bogus
case,
statistic,
Mr. Mitchell, if
absolutely.
you want to make the case that single parents shouldn't serve in combat, why don't you have a rule that says single parents shouldn't serve in combat?
We can't
why
have
do you
that.
say that we can't have
People
a...
oppose that because it would exclude women disproportionately. Would exclude
Well, then
more
why don't
women.
you address,
Very many
No,
why
women.
don't you address the problem that you claim to really care about, single parenthood,
What about-
combat strength, whatever,
What about
instead
all
of
of this?
instead of putting it always in terms of
There's
women?
the only way you can look at this issue is to consider all the factors, and people that argue against always want to limit the factors to something they feel they can defend. You have to weigh all the disadvantages, and the disadvantages outweigh the one advantage.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break, and when we return, we'll find out what the reaction might have been if some body bags filled with female soldiers were coming back from Panama. So what if Captain Bray, instead of being something of a folk hero for leading that assault, was now a corpse? What if she had been shot down by the Panamanian Defense Force, returned in a body bag? What do you think the national reaction would have been in this country?
I don't think it would have made any difference, really. I think the only people that mention this business about body bags are proponents of women in the military because they know it's a straw man. They know it's not a real argument against women. I have the real arguments. Unfortunately, they don't want to talk about them.
General,
I don't think there would have been much of a reaction because there were women who brought back from the airplane crash in Newfoundland in body bags.
I don't think there were combat soldiers, were they? I mean,
They were
civilians.
soldiers. There were women soldiers who were on that plane coming back to be on leave. And we survived that. We have women police officers who are killed. I think we've sort of gotten past that stage where that's going to be a major concern.
Everyone's gotten past that. Excuse me.
I think that we should be equally concerned about whoever comes home in a body bag, be it male or female.
And more will
I
come home in a
can't
body bag
find
if
that
we have
there's
women that can't throw hand grenades.
You know, I think what Mr. Mitchell says, General, is the most. I'm not very interested in these arguments about money and all these other things. But does this make this a more dangerous, less effective fighting force because women are in it?
No, I think it makes it a better fighting force because women are in it. What you want is ability and intelligence, and our women bring that to their jobs.
Now, let's
and
take that point.
dedication, loyalty, and citizenship.
Let's take that point because I think it's a good one. Surely you recognize physical strength is important in the Army. Obviously it is. It is not the only important qualification.
Nor is it as important as it used to be.
Now surely, why doesn't it make the Army a better fighting force if it can draw on the resources of twice as many people in the population in order to attract the brightest, most dedicated, hard-working people?
It doesn't need twice as many people, and it can get all the people it if it stops spending so much money on the women in terms of extra cost and start spending that money to recruit more men. It can get all it needs.
You know, Mr. Mitchell, there was a lot of people who've been saying that these young men who signed up for the Army because they wanted to get a college education or they wanted to learn a trade suddenly found themselves in harm's way in Panama. Maybe we're talking about an Army that doesn't understand that they may go into combat.
That's certainly the way we recruit them. We seduce a lot of people into joining the military, particularly women who don't like to do a lot of dirty work, who come in with the idea
Oh,
that they're
really?
I think that's wrong.
education and training.
Mr. Mitchell, did you really say, as you were recording an interview, as saying that the best way women can serve their nation, national defense, is by breeding sons?
I didn't say that was the best way. I said it's certainly one of the best.
I think you said it was the best. Maybe
Yeah,
you were
well,
misquoted.
you know, if we ever have any protracted conflict,
you
that's
know,
who we'll
But don't
depend
you
on.
think he has a point there, General, that
What,
there
the
is-
women are just breeders and that's all they
that's what I
are?
said.
What's
I
wrong
mean,
with motherhood?
on the question,
There's nothing
What's wrong with fatherhood?
What's wrong with fatherhood?
I think the woman who raises 2 or 3 young sons or daughters to carry on the fight
Is it
does
just
much
the
more.
responsibility of a woman to raise a
I think
son?
she does much more than just one woman who serves in the military and never marries, never has any children.
but
She's done a lot more.
the advertising for recruitment, which doesn't indicate that you might get killed. Do you think that
It
the
doesn't
women of
do that
America
for
really
men.
want to do that?
No, but we don't recruit stressing that aspect
That's
of it
what I'm
for
saying. Isn't that a
men or
mistake?
women.
Isn't that a mistake?
No, I don't think it's a mistake.
Because some of the parents whose boys died in Panama didn't know they were getting into that.
No, I'm sure they didn't.
Don't you think they
but I
should?
believe that if you go in the military, you buy the whole turf. That becomes a part of it, and you should understand that when you go in. And I can't believe that there is any soldier today who goes through training and who doesn't have that expectation. We are training people in the Army today, our soldiers, our women and our men soldiers, to meet the requirements of the Army, and they did it in Panama, just like they were trained.
Thank you
to
very
do.
much, General, and best of luck with fundraising for that memorial. Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. You might even make a small contribution. Bob and I will be back in a moment.
Good evening, I'm Lou Waters. CNN's Prime News is next. Thousands of Panamanians have been demonstrating outside the Vatican Embassy in Panama City for most of the day, demanding that Manuel Noriega be brought to justice. Now that night has fallen in the capital city, the crowds have dispersed, but there's new speculation that a deal on Noriega may be near, perhaps this evening. Prime News is next. Join us.
If you stripped Ford Taurus of all its awards, erased all the glowing reviews,
Say you're 20 years old, you're fighting in the U.S. Army in a foreign, steamy jungle against a vicious foe. Would you like a little girlie on either side of you as your combat partner? Be honest, when your life is at
I
stake.
would want to have people who were strong, tested, and well-equipped.
Give me a yes or no on
Listen,
that. You wouldn't want a woman there. Be honest.
I would want there are a heck of a lot of women I'd rather have fighting beside me if I came to that than a lot of men I know.
I don't believe that.
Well, we disagree about that, which is fortunate. Good night for Crossfire. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley.
From the right, I'm Robert Novak. Join us again next time for another edition of Crossfire.